I was kicked out of the house on Thanksgiving Eve. On the way, I found a stranded family. I towed their car for free. The man shook my hand. But when we arrived at his house, I froze in shock, realizing he was a millionaire. He gave me an invitation that still makes me shiver. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from, so I can see how far my story has reached. My name is Boyd, and I'm 62 years old. Yesterday was supposed to be Thanksgiving, but instead of carving turkey, I found myself packing my life into a single suitcase, while my son Derek stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching me like I was some kind of criminal. "You need to understand, Dad," he said, his voice cold and measured. "Cheryl and I have been talking, and we both agree that this arrangement isn't working anymore." I stopped folding my old flannel shirt and looked up at him. This was my son, the boy I'd taught to ride a bike, helped with homework, cheered for at every baseball game. The man standing before me now was a stranger wearing Derek's face. "What arrangement?" I asked, though my stomach was already sinking. I knew what was coming. Cheryl appeared behind him, her perfectly manicured fingers resting on his shoulder like she was claiming territory. She'd been working on this moment for months. I could see it in her eyes. The way she'd started making little comments about the electric bill, about groceries, about how cramped the house felt with 3 adults. "The arrangement where you live here rent-free while we pay for everything," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Derek and I are trying to start our own family, and we need space. We need privacy." I'd been living in their house for 8 months, ever since I'd lost my job at the hardware store. At 62, nobody wanted to hire an old man whose back ached and whose hands shook just a little when he was tired. I'd contributed what I could from my meager savings, helped with groceries, fixed everything that broke, shoveled snow, mowed the lawn. I thought I was pulling my weight. "I've been looking for work," I said quietly. "You know that." Derek's jaw tightened. "For 8 months, Dad. 8 months of excuses." "They're not excuses, son. The economy is tough for people my age." "The economy is tough for everyone," Cheryl snapped. "But the rest of us don't have the luxury of giving up." The words hit me like a physical blow. Giving up. I'd worked construction for 37 years, breaking my back to provide for Derek after his mother left us when he was 12. I'd sacrificed vacations, new clothes, my own dreams so he could have what he needed. And now, in my moment of need, I was accused of giving up. "I see," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Derek shifted uncomfortably. For a moment, just a moment, I saw a flicker of the boy I'd raised. But Cheryl squeezed his shoulder, and whatever softness had appeared vanished instantly. "We've already cleared out the guest room," she said. "Your things are packed." They'd gone through my belongings while I was out applying for jobs. The violation felt worse than the eviction itself. I walked to the guest room and found my entire life reduced to 1 suitcase and 2 cardboard boxes. 43 years of marriage to Derek's mother, 23 years of raising him alone, 62 years of living, all of it deemed worthy of 3 containers. I picked up the suitcase. It was heavier than I expected. Not because of what was in it, but because of what it represented, the end of everything I thought I knew about family. "Where am I supposed to go?" I asked. "You'll figure it out," Derek said, but he couldn't look me in the eye. "You always do." "No," I wanted to say. "I don't always figure it out. I'm tired. I'm scared. And I have nowhere to go." But pride is sometimes all a man has left, so I nodded and walked toward the door. The November air bit through my thin jacket as I loaded my belongings into my 18-year-old pickup truck. The engine coughed and wheezed before finally turning over. I sat there for a moment, looking back at the house where I'd lived for the past 8 months, the house where I'd helped Derek make mortgage payments when he first bought it, the house where I'd painted the nursery for the grandchildren I'd never have. Through the window, I could see Derek and Cheryl watching me. They weren't sad. They weren't conflicted. They looked relieved. I put the truck in drive and pulled away from the curb. In my rearview mirror, I watched them close the door and turn off the porch light. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. The roads were nearly empty as I drove aimlessly through neighborhoods decorated with warm, golden lights. Families were gathered around dining tables, sharing stories and laughter, grateful for what they had. I'd always imagined Derek and I would have many more Thanksgivings together. I'd pictured grandchildren eventually, teaching them the same things I'd taught him, passing down family traditions. Instead, I was driving through the cold November night with everything I owned in the back of a truck that might not make it through winter. I stopped at a 24-hour diner on the outskirts of town and ordered coffee I couldn't really afford. The waitress, a woman about my age with tired eyes and a kind smile, didn't ask why I was sitting alone on Thanksgiving night. She just kept my cup full and left me to my thoughts. My phone sat silent on the table. No calls, no texts. Derek had my number, but I knew it wouldn't ring. As I sat there, staring into my coffee, I tried to understand where I'd gone wrong. Had I been too much of a burden? Had I failed to see signs that I was unwelcome? Or had Derek simply become someone I no longer recognized, shaped by a woman who saw me as an obstacle to her perfect life? The truth was, it didn't matter anymore. What mattered was what came next, and for the first time in my adult life, I had absolutely no idea what that would be. The diner's warmth couldn't touch the cold that had settled in my chest. I was alone in a way I'd never been before, even after Derek's mother left. Then I'd had purpose, raising my son, providing for him, showing him what it meant to be a good man. Now, it seemed, all of that had been for nothing. I paid for my coffee and walked back to the truck. The engine turned over on the third try, and I pulled back onto the empty highway, driving nowhere and everywhere at once, carrying the weight of a lifetime of love that apparently hadn't been enough. I'd been driving for 3 hours when I saw them. The snow had started falling around midnight, and by 2 in the morning it was coming down hard enough to make the roads treacherous. I was somewhere outside Columbus, Ohio, my truck's heater barely keeping the frost off the windshield, when the headlights caught them. A family stood beside a burgundy sedan on the shoulder of Highway 23. Steam rose from under the hood, and even from a distance I could see the desperation in their postures. The man was trying to wave down passing cars, but vehicle after vehicle swept past without slowing down. Behind him, a woman sat in the driver's seat, with what looked like 2 small children in the back. Every instinct told me to keep driving. I had my own problems. I was homeless, nearly broke, and driving a truck that might die at any moment. The last thing I needed was to get involved with strangers, but I couldn't do it. Maybe it was the way the man's shoulders sagged when another car passed him by. Maybe it was the thought of those children sitting in a cold car in the middle of nowhere. Or maybe it was because I knew what it felt like to be abandoned, to have people look right through you when you needed help most. I pulled over, my truck's hazard lights joining theirs and painting the snowy darkness with urgent flashes of orange. The man approached carefully as I got out. He was younger than Derek, maybe early 30s, with dark hair and eyes that showed both relief and wariness. Smart man. You never know who's going to stop on a dark highway. "Thank you for stopping," he said, his breath forming clouds in the freezing air. "I'm Marcus. That's my wife Elena, and our daughters in the car." "Boyd," I replied, offering my hand. His grip was firm, calloused, a working man's hands. "What's the problem?" "Radiator, I think. Started overheating about 10 miles back, and now she won't start at all." He gestured helplessly at the sedan. "I've got roadside assistance, but they're saying it could be 4 hours before anyone can get here. Maybe longer with the weather." I walked over to look under the hood. The engine was still ticking from the heat, and I could smell the sweet scent of coolant. A blown hose, most likely. In this cold, with children in the car, 4 hours could be dangerous. "Where are you headed?" I asked. "Home. About 60 miles north of here, outside Delaware." He ran a hand through his hair. "I know it's a lot to ask, but do you think? Could you possibly give us a tow? I'll pay whatever you think is fair." I studied his face in the dim light. There was something genuine about him, something that reminded me of myself at that age when Derek was small and every decision felt crucial. This man was trying to get his family home safely, the same way I'd always tried to get Derek home safely. "I don't have professional towing equipment," I said. "Just some heavy-duty straps in the truck. It's not ideal, but if you're willing to risk it." Relief flooded his features. "Yes, absolutely. How much do you want?" I thought about my dwindling bank account, the $73 in my wallet, the fact that I didn't know where I'd be sleeping tomorrow night. A tow job like this could easily run $200, maybe more. "Don't worry about it," I heard myself say. Marcus blinked. "I'm sorry. No charge. Let's just get your family home." He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. "Sir, I can't let you do this for free. You're already going out of your way." I said, "Don't worry about it." I was already walking back to my truck to get the tow straps. "Help me hook this up." The process took about 20 minutes. The sedan was heavier than my old truck preferred, but the straps held and the connection was solid. Marcus insisted on riding in the sedan to steer and brake, while Elena and the 2 little girls, twins, maybe 7 or 8 years old, climbed into my truck's cab. Elena was visibly pregnant, probably 6 or 7 months along, and she moved carefully as she settled the girls between us. They were beautiful children with their father's dark eyes and their mother's gentle demeanor. Despite the circumstances, they weren't crying or complaining. Well-raised kids. "I'm Elena," she said as I eased the truck back onto the highway. "These are Sophia and Isabella. Girls, can you say thank you to Mr. Boyd?" I supplied. "And there's no need for thanks." "Yes, there is," Elena said firmly. "You have no idea what this means to us." I focused on the road, keeping our speed steady and safe. The weight of the sedan behind us made every turn and hill a careful negotiation, especially with the snow getting heavier. But the truck was handling it better than I'd expected. "Are you from around here?" Elena asked. "Originally from Michigan," I said, "but I've been living in different places for a while now." It wasn't entirely a lie. 24 hours ago, I'd been living with Derek. Now I was living in my truck. "What about you? You mentioned Delaware?" "We have a small place outside town. Marcus grew up there, and we moved back about 5 years ago when his business started doing well." She paused, then added, "He's in real estate development, commercial properties mostly." I nodded, concentrating on a particularly slippery stretch of road. Sophia, the little girl pressed against my right side, had fallen asleep despite the truck's rough idle. Isabella was fighting to stay awake, her head bobbing every few seconds. "This is very kind of you," Elena continued, "especially on Thanksgiving night. Don't you have family waiting for you?" The question hit me like a punch to the gut. I kept my eyes on the road and my voice steady. "Not tonight." She must have heard something in my tone because she didn't push. We drove in comfortable silence for a while. The only sounds, the truck's engine, the whisper of snow against the windshield, and the soft breathing of the 2 little girls. About 40 minutes into the drive, Isabella stirred and looked up at me with sleepy eyes. "Are you a grandpa?" she asked in that direct way only children can manage. "Isabella," Elena said quietly, "that's not polite to ask." "It's okay," I said, though my chest tightened. "No, sweetheart, I'm not a grandpa." "Would you like to be?" Isabella asked. The innocence of the question nearly broke me. Here was a child I'd known for less than an hour, asking me something I'd dreamed about for years but was beginning to think would never happen. "Maybe someday," I managed. Isabella nodded seriously and settled back against my arm. Within minutes, she was asleep too. Elena watched the exchange with thoughtful eyes. "You're good with children," she observed. "I raised my son by myself for most of his childhood," I said. "You learn." That must have been difficult. It was worth it. The lie came easily, though it left a bitter taste in my mouth. The GPS on Marcus's phone, which Elena was holding, indicated we were getting close. I could see the faint glow of town lights through the snow, and my heart sank a little. This strange, peaceful interlude was almost over. Soon I'd be alone again, back on the highway with nowhere to go. But as we turned off the main road and followed a winding path through what looked like countryside, I began to realize that Marcus and Elena's small place might not be quite what I'd imagined. The headlights swept across manicured lawns, a wrought iron gate, and a driveway that seemed to stretch forever into the darkness. Whatever Marcus did in real estate development, it was clearly very successful. And that's when I knew that this night was about to become even more complicated than I'd imagined. The house that emerged from the darkness as we followed the winding driveway wasn't a house at all. It was a mansion. 3 stories of stone and timber rose before us, with warm light spilling from dozens of windows. Even in the snow, I could see the careful landscaping, the circular fountain now covered for winter, the multi-car garage that probably cost more than most people's homes. I sat in stunned silence as Marcus guided us to a stop near the front entrance. This wasn't just successful. This was wealth on a level I'd never encountered before. Elena seemed to notice my shock and gave me a gentle smile. "I know it looks like a lot," she said quietly, careful not to wake the girls. "Marcus worked very hard to get here." The front door opened before we'd even gotten out of the truck, and a woman in her 50s hurried out despite the snow. She had graying hair and kind eyes, wearing a thick robe over what looked like pajamas. "Thank goodness you're safe," she called out, rushing to embrace Elena as she carefully climbed down from the truck. "When Marcus called and said you were stranded, I was so worried." "We're fine, Maria," Elena assured her. "This is Boyd. He towed us home." Maria turned to me with tears in her eyes. "Bless you," she said simply. "Bless you for helping them." Marcus was unhooking the toe straps and I moved to help him, grateful for something to do with my hands. The magnitude of what I was seeing, the house, the grounds, the obvious wealth, was making me feel increasingly out of place. "Boyd," Marcus said as we finished with the straps, "I can't thank you enough. Please come inside. It's freezing out here. I should get going," I said, though the thought of climbing back into that cold truck made my bones ache. "You've got your family to worry about." "Absolutely not," Elena said firmly, having overheard. "It's nearly 4 in the morning. You've been driving in a snowstorm and you just saved us. The least we can do is offer you coffee and a warm place to sit for a few minutes." I wanted to refuse. Everything about this situation screamed that I didn't belong here. But the twins were stirring, looking around with sleepy confusion, and Isabella spotted me and smiled. "Boyd," she said, suddenly wide awake. "Are you coming inside?" And just like that, my resistance crumbled. The interior of the house was even more impressive than the exterior. Hardwood floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, and a sweeping staircase curved up to the second floor. Original artwork hung on the walls, and Persian rugs that probably cost more than my truck covered the polished floors. Maria, who I learned was Marcus and Elena's live-in housekeeper and nanny, bustled about making hot chocolate for the girls and coffee for the adults. The twins had fully awakened and were chattering excitedly about their adventure, treating me like some kind of hero for giving them a truck ride. "Girls, go with Maria and get ready for bed," Elena said gently. "It's way past bedtime." "But we want to stay with Boyd," Sophia protested. "Boyd will still be here in the morning," Marcus said, then looked at me questioningly. "Won't you? I hope you'll stay the night. It's too late and too cold to be driving anymore tonight." I opened my mouth to decline, but the words stuck in my throat. Where would I go? Back to that 24-hour diner? Sleep in my truck in some parking lot? The truth was, I had nowhere else to be. "If it's not too much trouble," I said quietly. "No trouble at all," Elena said warmly. "We have plenty of room." As Maria led the girls upstairs, Marcus gestured for me to follow him into what appeared to be a study. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined the walls, and a fire crackled in a massive stone fireplace. He poured 2 glasses of what looked like expensive whiskey and handed me one. "To good Samaritans," he said, raising his glass. We drank in silence for a moment, and I felt the whiskey warm my chest. Finally, Marcus spoke. "Can I ask you something, Boyd?" I nodded. "Why did you stop? And why wouldn't you let me pay you?" I stared into the fire, considering my answer. "Because I know what it's like to be stranded," I said finally. "To need help and have people drive right past you." Marcus studied my face. "That sounds like experience talking." 24 hours ago, my son kicked me out of his house," I heard myself say. The whiskey had loosened my tongue, but more than that, there was something about Marcus that invited honesty. Told me I was a burden. Gave me an hour to pack my things and get out. Marcus's expression darkened. "Your own son?" "His wife's been working on him for months. I lost my job back in March. Couldn't find anything else. They let me stay for a while, but..." I shrugged. I guess charity has its limits, even from family. "How old are you?" 62. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he did something that surprised me. He walked over to a desk in the corner and picked up a framed photograph. He studied it for several seconds before bringing it over to me. The photo showed a man who looked remarkably like Marcus, but older. He was standing beside a young boy, clearly Marcus as a child, in front of what appeared to be a construction site. "That's my father," Marcus said quietly. His name was David. I looked more closely at the photo. The resemblance between Marcus and his father was striking, but there was something familiar about the older man that I couldn't place. "He died 10 years ago," Marcus continued. "Lung cancer. He was a construction worker his whole life, just like you were. Worked himself to the bone to provide for our family. I'm sorry for your loss." Marcus sat down across from me, still holding the photo. "The thing is, Boyd, I never got to tell him I forgave him." "Forgave him for what?" Marcus's jaw tightened. "When I was 16, we had a huge fight. I was angry, rebellious, thought I knew everything. I told him I hated him, that I wished he wasn't my father. He slapped me, the only time he ever laid a hand on me, and I ran out of the house." He paused, his fingers tracing the edge of the photo frame. "My mother took his side, said I was ungrateful, that I needed to apologize. But I was too proud, too stubborn. I moved in with friends, got a job, put myself through college. I spent years proving that I didn't need him. that I could make it on my own. But you did, I said. Look at all this. Yeah, I did. And you know what the worst part is? He was proud of me. When I started making money, when I bought this house, when Elena and I got married, he never stopped loving me, never stopped hoping we'd reconcile. My mother would call and tell me how much he missed me, how he'd drive by my office building sometimes just to see if he could catch a glimpse of me. The pain in Marcus's voice was raw, immediate. I could see where this story was heading. By the time I was ready to swallow my pride and reach out to him, it was too late. He'd been diagnosed and he only had a few weeks left. I went to see him in the hospital, but he was so weak, so medicated. I don't even know if he understood what I was trying to say. Marcus looked up at me and I saw tears in his eyes. I've lived with that regret every single day for the past 10 years. The knowledge that I let pride and anger cost me years with a man who loved me unconditionally. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Marcus, why are you telling me this? He leaned forward, his gaze intense. Because when I saw you tonight, standing there in the snow helping a stranger's family, asking for nothing in return, you reminded me of him. And when you told me about your son, about what he did to you, Marcus shook his head. I see a second chance. A second chance for what? Marcus stood up and walked back to the fireplace. Boyd, I want to make you an offer, but I need you to hear me out completely before you say anything. My heart was pounding now. What kind of offer? I want you to stay, not just tonight, I mean permanently. Live here, be part of our family. Marcus turned to face me. Elena and I have been trying to give the girls the kind of childhood I never had, stable, loving, with extended family around. But both our parents are gone, and we don't have any siblings. The girls have never had a grandfather figure in their lives. I stared at him. Marcus, you don't even know me. I know enough. I know you risked your own safety to help strangers in a snowstorm. I know you wouldn't take money from a man who obviously needed to get his pregnant wife and children home safely. I know you raised a son by yourself and did your best to be a good father, even if he can't see that now. The room was spinning a little, and I wasn't sure if it was the whiskey or the magnitude of what Marcus was suggesting. You're talking about charity, I said. I won't be anyone's charity case. This isn't charity, Boyd. This is family. Something I never had with my own father. Something you're not getting from your own son. Elena and I have more money than we know what to do with. But we can't buy the things that matter most. Wisdom, experience, the kind of love only a grandfather can give. I stood up abruptly, the whiskey glass shaking in my hand. This was too much, too fast, too good to be true. I need some air, I said. Marcus nodded. The guest room is upstairs. Second door on the right. Think about it, Boyd. Think about what it would mean for all of us. As I climbed those elegant stairs to a guest room that was larger and more luxurious than any place I'd ever lived, I couldn't shake the feeling that my entire life had just taken a turn I never could have imagined. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in a bed that was bigger than my entire studio apartment back when I had an apartment, staring at the ceiling and trying to make sense of what Marcus had offered me. The guest room was decorated with the kind of understated elegance that spoke of real wealth. Not flashy or gaudy, but everything carefully chosen and beautifully crafted. Through the window, I could see the ground stretching away into the darkness, snow still falling steadily. Somewhere in this house, a family slept peacefully, and I was the stranger who had somehow stumbled into their world. A soft knock on the door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I said, expecting Marcus. Instead, Elena entered, carrying a steaming mug. She was wearing a thick robe over pajamas, her pregnant belly visible beneath the fabric. She moved carefully, the way women do in their final trimester. "I brought you some tea," she said, setting the mug on the nightstand. "Chamomile. It helps with sleep." "Thank you." I sat up in bed, pulling the covers around my waist. "You didn't need to do that." Elena settled into the chair beside the bed with a slight grunt. "Marcus told me about your conversation," she said without preamble, "about his offer." I felt my cheeks flush. "I'm sorry if he spoke out of turn. I know this is your home, your family. You should have a say in any decisions." "You're right, I should." Elena smiled, and there was something mysterious in her expression, "which is why I'm here." She was quiet for a moment, her hands resting on her belly. I could see her gathering her thoughts. "Boyd, can I tell you something about my husband? Something he probably didn't mention because he's too humble." I nodded. 5 years ago, when we moved back here, Marcus wasn't just successful, he was empty. Oh, he had all the trappings of success. The business was thriving. We had this house, plenty of money. But he was haunted by his relationship with his father. He threw himself into work, trying to prove something to a man who was already gone. Elena shifted in her chair, wincing slightly. The girls and I barely saw him. He'd leave before they woke up and come home after they were asleep. He was physically present but emotionally absent, and I was terrified we were going to lose him to his regrets. What changed? 2 years ago, we were at Sophia and Isabella's school for a Grandfather's Day event. All the other children had grandfathers there, reading with them, playing games, just being present. Our girls sat by themselves, and I watched Marcus's face crumble. That night he cried for the first time since I'd known him. Elena reached for the tea mug and held it between her hands, as if drawing warmth from it. He told me that night that he finally understood what he'd lost. Not just his father, but the chance to be the kind of father his own dad had tried to be. He said he wanted to break the cycle, to make sure our children never felt the abandonment he'd carried for so long. It sounds like he's been a good father since then. He has. But Boyd, you have to understand, Marcus sees patterns everywhere. It's what makes him successful in business. And when he met you tonight, when he heard your story, he saw an opportunity to heal something that's been broken in both your lives. I took a sip of the tea. It was perfect. Not too hot. Sweetened just right. Elena, I appreciate what you're saying, but this is happening too fast. You don't know anything about me. I could be dangerous, unreliable, any number of things. Elena laughed, a warm sound that filled the room. Do you think we're naive, Boyd? Do you think Marcus built this life by being careless about people? I don't understand. While you and Marcus were talking, I made some phone calls. I called the hardware store where you worked, spoke to your former supervisor, Tom Patterson, I believe. My heart stopped. You investigated me. I did my due diligence. Tom told me you were the most reliable employee he'd had in 20 years. Said you never missed a day, always stayed late if a customer needed help, and that letting you go was the hardest decision he'd ever made as a manager. Elena leaned forward slightly. He also told me about the time you spent your own money to help an elderly customer fix her porch railing because she couldn't afford the materials, and about how you mentored the younger employees, teaching them skills that went far beyond what was required. I felt exposed, vulnerable. Those were just small things. Small things that reveal character, Elena said firmly. I also called your landlord from the apartment you had before you moved in with your son. Mrs. Chen, wasn't it? She said you were the best tenant she'd ever had, always paid rent early, helped other tenants with repairs, shoveled snow for the elderly residents. The room felt too warm suddenly. Why are you telling me this? Because I want you to understand that this isn't a spontaneous decision based on one act of kindness. Marcus and I talked for 2 hours after you went to bed. We've been looking for someone like you without even realizing it. Elena stood up carefully, one hand supporting her back. Boyd, we're about to have our third child. Sophia and Isabella are at an age where they need stability, guidance, the kind of wisdom that only comes from life experience. And Marcus. She paused. Marcus needs to give the kind of love he never got to give his father. What about what I need? I asked quietly. Elena smiled. What do you need, Boyd? The question hit me like a physical blow. What did I need? For months, I'd been focused on what I'd lost. My job, my independence, my son's respect. I'd been thinking in terms of survival, of just getting by. But what did I actually need? I need to matter to someone, I heard myself say. I need to feel like my life has purpose. And what would give you that purpose? I thought about the twins falling asleep against me in the truck. The way Isabella had asked if I wanted to be a grandfather. Sophia's smile when she saw me this morning. I thought about Marcus's pain over his lost father, Elena's quiet strength as she managed a household and prepared for another child. Being needed, I said finally. Not as charity, but as family. Elena moved to the window and looked out at the snowy grounds. Marcus has a trust fund set up for each of the girls, for college, for their futures. But money can't give them what you could give them. Stories about what it was like to grow up in a different era, lessons about hard work and perseverance, the kind of unconditional love that only a grandfather can provide. She turned back to me. Boyd, we're not offering you charity. We're offering you a chance to be the grandfather our children deserve, and the father figure Marcus needs to heal his own wounds. And what's in it for you? Elena's smile was radiant. Peace of mind, knowing that when this baby comes, I'll have help from someone who's raised a child, knowing that Marcus won't carry his regrets alone anymore, knowing that our children will grow up understanding what family really means. A comfortable silence settled between us. Outside, the snow had stopped, and the first hints of dawn were beginning to lighten the sky. "There's something else," Elena said softly. "Something Marcus didn't tell you because he didn't want to influence your decision." "What's that?" "His business partner is looking for someone to oversee property maintenance for their commercial properties. It's not glamorous work. Basic repairs, tenant relations, that sort of thing. But it's steady employment with good benefits, and it would give you financial independence." My throat tightened. Why would he do that? Because family takes care of family. And because a man needs to feel useful, needs to contribute. Marcus understands that. Elena moved toward the door, then paused. "Boyd, I want you to know that if you decide this isn't right for you, we'll understand completely. Marcus will help you find a place to live, help you get back on your feet. No strings attached, no guilt. But if you stay..." She trailed off, and I saw tears in her eyes. "If I stay? If you stay, you'll be giving our family something we didn't even know we were missing. And maybe, just maybe, you'll find that the love you thought you'd lost was just waiting for you somewhere else." After Elena left, I sat in that chair by the window and watched the sun come up over the grounds. In a few hours, the twins would wake up and come looking for me, expecting me to be there. Marcus would make breakfast and talk about ordinary things, the weather, plans for the day, what the girls wanted for Christmas. For the first time in months, I could picture a future that didn't involve sleeping in my truck or taking odd jobs just to survive. I could see myself helping Sophia with homework, teaching Isabella how to change a tire, holding Elena's new baby while she rested. But more than that, I could see myself mattering again, being part of something bigger than my own loneliness and regret. The decision, I realized, had already been made. It had been made the moment I saw that family stranded by the side of the road and couldn't bring myself to drive past them. Now I just had to find the courage to accept what they were offering me, not just shelter and purpose, but something I'd thought was lost forever. The chance to be part of a family that actually wanted me. I'd been living with Marcus and Elena's family for 6 weeks when Derek found me. 6 weeks of morning coffee with Marcus, of helping Sophia with her math homework, of teaching Isabella how to braid rope for her Girl Scout project. 6 weeks of feeling useful again, of waking up each morning with purpose instead of dread. The job Marcus had mentioned turned out to be real and exactly what I needed. I was managing maintenance for 3 office buildings and a small shopping center, work that kept me busy but wasn't beyond my capabilities. The pay was fair, and more importantly, it gave me the dignity of contributing to my own support. I'd been replacing a broken light fixture in the lobby of the Riverside office complex when my phone rang. The number wasn't one I recognized, but something made me answer it anyway. "Dad?" My heart stopped. Derek's voice, uncertain and small in a way I hadn't heard since he was a child. "Derek." I set down my tools and stepped outside, not wanting the building tenants to overhear. "How did you get this number?" "It took some doing. I had to call around, track down some of your old friends. Tom Patterson at the hardware store finally gave it to me." I was quiet, waiting. "Dad, we need to talk." "We had our talk 6 weeks ago," I said evenly. "I believe you made your position clear." "Please." There was desperation in his voice now. "Can I come see you? I know you're living somewhere outside Delaware. I can drive up this weekend." Every instinct told me to hang up, but this was still my son, the boy I'd raised, and despite everything, I couldn't quite silence the hope that maybe, somehow, he'd realized his mistake. "Why now, Derek?" A long pause. "Because I miss you," he said quietly. "Because Cheryl and I have been talking, and we think maybe we were too hasty. Too harsh." I closed my eyes. "What's happened?" "Nothing's happened. We want to make things right." It was a lie. I could hear it in his voice, the same tone he'd used as a teenager when he was trying to talk his way out of trouble. But I found myself saying, "I'll text you the address. Come Sunday afternoon." I spent the rest of the week dreading his visit. Marcus and Elena could sense my anxiety, though I'd only given them the basic details about Derek's call. The twins, however, were excited about meeting my son. "Is he nice like you, Grandpa Boyd?" Sophia asked over breakfast Saturday morning. Somewhere in the past few weeks, both girls had started calling me Grandpa, and I'd stopped correcting them. "He's complicated, sweetheart. I said, which was the kindest way I could put it. Sunday arrived gray and cold. I'd been pacing the living room for an hour when Derek's car pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I watched him get out and look up at the house with undisguised amazement. Cheryl emerged from the passenger side, her expression calculating as she took in the grounds, the three-car garage, the obvious wealth. So she'd come too. That told me everything I needed to know about why they were really here. Marcus answered the door when they rang, and I heard the introductions from the next room. Derek's voice was overly friendly, the way it got when he was trying to impress someone. Cheryl's laugh was bright and artificial. Dad. Derek entered the living room with his arms outstretched, as if we were resuming a conversation from yesterday, rather than addressing 6 weeks of silence and a lifetime of disappointment. I didn't move from my position by the fireplace. Derek, Cheryl. Derek's arms dropped when it became clear I wasn't going to embrace him. Cheryl hung back, her eyes taking inventory of every expensive item in the room. This is someplace, Derek said, trying to fill the awkward silence. Your friend must do very well for himself. Marcus and Elena have been very kind to me. I'm sure they have. There was an edge to Derek's voice now, the first crack in his friendly facade. Must be nice, having wealthy friends. Marcus appeared in the doorway. Boyd, would you like me to give you some privacy? Stay, I said firmly. Derek, Cheryl, this is Marcus Chen. Marcus, my son Derek, and his wife Cheryl. Marcus shook their hands politely, but I could see him assessing them, reading the undercurrents in the room with the same skill that had made him successful in business. Beautiful home, Cheryl gushed. You must work very hard to afford a place like this. We've been fortunate, Marcus replied diplomatically. Derek cleared his throat. Dad, could we talk? Privately? I looked at Marcus, who nodded and withdrew, but I noticed he didn't go far. I could see his shadow in the hallway. So, Derek said once we were alone, this is what you've been up to. Living in luxury while your family worries about you. Your family? I asked quietly. 6 weeks ago, you made it very clear I wasn't part of your family anymore. Cheryl stepped forward. Boyd, we were all upset that night. Tensions were high. You can't really think we meant all those things we said. Which things? That I was a burden? That I was freeloading? That you needed me out of your house? Derek had the grace to look ashamed, but only for a moment. We were under a lot of stress. The mortgage payment had gone up. My hours at work were cut. We said things we didn't mean. Your hours were cut? The company downsized. I'm only working part-time now. Derek's voice grew smaller. We're actually behind on the mortgage. The bank is threatening foreclosure. And there it was. The real reason for this visit. I see, I said. And you thought you'd come here and what? Ask your wealthy friends for help? Not ask, Cheryl said quickly. We just thought that maybe if you put in a good word. You want me to ask Marcus for money? Not for us, Derek said. For you. I mean, you're living here. You must have some influence. Surely he'd want to help his friend's family. I stared at my son, this man I'd raised to be better than this. Derek, do you hear yourself? I hear a son trying to save his family's home. Derek shot back. I hear someone willing to swallow his pride for the people he loves. The people you love? I felt anger building in my chest, hot and righteous. The people you love don't get kicked out in the middle of the night. The people you love don't get told they're worthless burdens. We made a mistake, okay? Derek's voice rose. We're here to fix it. We want you to come home. This is my home now. Cheryl laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. This isn't your home, Boyd. You're a charity case, a pet project. Do you really think these people see you as family? Before I could respond, Sophia's voice rang out from the stairway. Grandpa Boyd, is everything okay? Derek and Cheryl turned toward the sound, and I saw Derek's face go white as he took in the implications of what the child had called me. Sophia appeared in the doorway, her hair in pigtails, wearing the new dress Elena had bought her for church. Isabella was right behind her, carrying a drawing she'd been working on. We made you a picture, Isabella announced, holding up her artwork. It showed stick figures standing in front of a house. Marcus, Elena, the twins, and in the center, a gray-haired figure labeled Grandpa Boyd. The silence in the room was deafening. Girls, I said gently, these are Derek and Cheryl. Could you give us a few more minutes? Sophia studied Derek with the frank assessment only children can manage. You don't look like Grandpa Boyd, she said finally. I'm his son, Derek said stiffly. Oh, Sophia brightened. Then you're our cousin. Isabella bounced on her toes. Are you going to live here too? We have lots of rooms. I saw Derek's jaw tighten. No, we're not going to live here. We have our own home. For now, Cheryl muttered under her breath. Elena appeared, drawn by the voices. "Girls, why don't you show Isabella's picture to Daddy? He's in his office." After the children left, Elena looked between Derek, Cheryl, and me. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut. "I should let you continue your conversation," she said diplomatically. "Actually," I said, "I think we're finished here." Derek's face flushed red. "Dad, you can't be serious. You're going to choose these strangers over your own flesh and blood?" "These strangers," I said quietly, "never made me sleep in my truck. These strangers never told me I was worthless. These strangers see me as family, not as a burden to be disposed of when I became inconvenient." "We said we were sorry." "No, Derek. You said you made a mistake. That's not the same thing as being sorry." Cheryl stepped closer, her mask finally slipping completely. "Fine. You want to play house with these rich people? Go ahead. But don't come crawling back to us when they get tired of their charity project." "I won't," I said simply. Derek stared at me for a long moment, and I saw something die in his eyes. The last vestige of the relationship we'd once had. "You know what, Dad? Maybe we were right the first time. Maybe you are just a selfish old man who thinks the world owes him something." Each word was designed to cut, to hurt. 6 weeks ago, they would have destroyed me. But now, with Elena watching protectively from the doorway and the sound of the twins' laughter drifting from Marcus's office, Derek's words felt hollow, powerless. "Maybe I am," I said. "But I'd rather be a selfish old man who's loved than a bitter young man who threw away the best thing he had." Derek's hands clenched into fists. For a moment I thought he might actually hit me. Instead, he turned on his heel and headed for the door. "Don't ever contact us again," he said over his shoulder. "I won't," I replied. As their car pulled out of the driveway, Elena came to stand beside me at the window. "Are you okay?" she asked softly. I watched until Derek's car disappeared around the bend, carrying my son away from my life forever. I felt many things: sadness, regret, even a strange kind of relief. But for the first time since that night 6 weeks ago, I didn't feel lost. "Yeah," I said, surprised to realize it was true. "I think I am." 2 years later, I'm standing in the nursery that Elena and I designed together, holding my 3-month-old grandson, Michael, while he sleeps peacefully in my arms. Through the window, I can see Sophia and Isabella playing in the snow-covered yard, building what they insist is a snowman but looks more like a lumpy snow creature with stick arms and a carrot nose. The girls are 9 now, full of energy and questions and the kind of fearless curiosity that makes every day an adventure. They call me Grandpa Boyd without any hesitation, and I've stopped thinking of myself as anything other than their grandfather. Blood doesn't make family. Love does. And this house is filled with more love than I ever dreamed possible. Marcus appears in the doorway wearing the kind of satisfied smile that's become his default expression over the past 2 years. Fatherhood suits him, but more than that, having his own father figure has healed something in him that I'm not sure he even knew was broken. "How's he doing?" Marcus asks quietly, nodding toward the baby. "Perfect," I say, adjusting the blanket around Michael's tiny form. Just like his sisters were at this age. Elena's taking a nap, doctor's orders. Marcus comes to stand beside me at the window. The girls are going to freeze out there if they don't come in soon. They're having too much fun to feel the cold. We stand in comfortable silence, watching the girls play. This is what contentment feels like, I've learned. Not the desperate happiness that comes from getting something you want, but the deep, steady peace that comes from being exactly where you belong. "Boyd," Marcus says suddenly, "I need to tell you something." Something in his tone makes me look at him more closely. He's nervous about something, but not unhappy. If anything, he looks excited. "What is it?" "Elena and I have been talking, and we want to make some things official, legal." Marcus turns to face me fully. "We want to adopt you." I blink. "I'm sorry?" "Adult adoption. It's a real thing, perfectly legal. You'd be our legal father. We'd be your legal children. The girls would officially be your granddaughters, Michael your grandson." The baby shifts in my arms, making a small sound of contentment, and I look down at him while I process what Marcus has just said. "Why?" I ask finally. "Because family should be official." Elena's voice comes from the doorway. She's wearing a robe, her hair messed from sleep, but she's smiling. "Because we want there to be no question about where you belong. But more than that," Marcus adds, "we want you to be our heir." Elena and I have been working with lawyers to restructure our wills. When we're gone, everything goes to you first, then to the children. We want you to be the patriarch of this family, officially and legally. I sink into the rocking chair beside the crib, still holding Michael. This is too much to process. You don't need to do that, I say quietly. I already feel like part of the family. We know, Elena says, coming to sit on the arm of the chair. But we want it in writing. We want it legal. And Boyd. She pauses, her voice becoming emotional. We want to take your name. What? The Chen Boyd family, Marcus says with a grin. It has a nice ring to it, don't you think? I stare at them both, these two remarkable people who pulled me from the lowest point of my life and gave me purpose again. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Sophia calls from the doorway. She and Isabella are standing there, snow-covered and red-cheeked from the cold. We already picked out what to call you at the ceremony. What ceremony? The family ceremony, Isabella explains, as if it's obvious. When you officially become our legal grandpa, we're going to call you Patriarch Boyd, like in the history books. I laugh, the sound mixing tears and joy in equal measure. Patriarch Boyd, it's very distinguished, Sophia says solemnly. Elena reaches over and takes Michael from my arms, settling him against her shoulder. The girls have been in on this for months. They helped us plan everything. You've been planning for months? Ever since Derek's visit, Marcus admits. That day, watching how you handled him, seeing how you chose us over blood family. Elena and I knew we wanted to make this permanent. We wanted to make sure you could never doubt your place here. I think about Derek sometimes. Wonder how he's doing, whether he and Cheryl managed to save their house. I found out through mutual acquaintances that they didn't. They lost the house 6 months after that confrontation. Part of me felt sad about that, but it was the same distant sadness I might feel hearing about the troubles of a stranger. Derek made his choice when he threw me away, and I made mine when I chose to stay. There's something else, Elena says, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Something the lawyer suggested that we thought you might like. What now? Marcus pulls out a legal document and hands it to me. I read the header twice before it sinks in. A name change? I look up at them. You want to change your last name to Boyd? All of us, Elena confirms. Marcus Boyd, Elena Boyd, Sophia and Isabella Boyd, Michael Boyd. One family, one name. I feel tears starting and I don't try to stop them. Your name is Chen. Your family legacy. My family legacy is whatever I choose to make it, Marcus says firmly. And I choose to make it about the man who taught me what it really means to be a father. Sophia bounces on her toes. Can we tell him about the other surprise? What other surprise? I ask, though I'm not sure I can handle any more emotions today. Isabella runs to the window and points outside. Look, I stand and peer out the window. There, parked in the driveway next to Marcus's BMW and Elena's SUV, is a brand new pickup truck. It's silver, gleaming in the afternoon sun, with a red ribbon tied around the front bumper. Happy Gotcha Day, Grandpa Boyd! Both girls shout in unison. Gotcha Day? The day we got you, Sophia explains. 2 years ago tomorrow, when you helped us on the highway and came home with us. Elena laughs. We figured you needed a proper truck for all the projects you keep taking on around here. It's true. In the past 2 years, I've built the girls a treehouse, renovated the garden shed, constructed raised beds for Elena's vegetable garden, and helped Marcus design a workshop in the garage. Having purpose, having projects, having people who depend on me, it's given me energy I didn't know I still had. The keys are in the kitchen, Marcus says. Want to take her for a test drive? Can we come? Isabella asks. Absolutely, I say, then pause. But first I need to say something to all of you. The room goes quiet, even baby Michael seeming to sense the solemnity of the moment. 2 years ago I thought my life was over. I thought I'd failed as a father, that I was useless, that I'd never matter to anyone again. I look at each of their faces, Marcus with his kind eyes, Elena with her gentle strength, the twins with their boundless love and energy, baby Michael sleeping peacefully in his mother's arms. You saved me, I continue, not just from being homeless or broke or alone. You saved me from disappearing entirely. You gave me back my purpose, my identity, my reason for getting up every morning. Boyd, Elena starts, but I hold up a hand. Let me finish. I need to say this. I take a deep breath. I've learned that family isn't about who shares your blood, or your last name, or your genes. Family is about who shows up, who stays, who sees value in you when you can't see it in yourself. I look at Marcus. You saw something in a broken-down old man stranded on a highway, something worth saving. You gave me not just a home, but a place in your family. I turned to Elena. You trusted me with your children, made me feel needed and useful when I thought those days were behind me forever. Finally, I kneel down to the twins' level. And you too showed me what it means to be loved unconditionally, no questions asked, no conditions attached. Sophia throws her arms around my neck. Does that mean yes to the adoption? I hug her tight, then reach for Isabella too. That means yes to everything. The adoption, the name change, the ceremony, all of it. Even to Patriarch Boyd? Isabella asks solemnly. Especially to Patriarch Boyd. The next hour is a whirlwind of activity. We pile into the new truck, Marcus in the passenger seat, Elena in the back with the baby, the twins squeezed between us, all talking at once about the truck's features and where we should drive first and whether the radio gets the country music station I like. As we drive through the countryside around Delaware, past farms and forests and the little towns that dot the landscape, I think about the night 2 years ago when I pulled over to help a stranded family. I thought I was just doing a good deed for strangers. I had no idea I was driving toward the life I was meant to live. We stop at a diner for hot chocolate, and I watch Marcus help the girls out of the truck, Elena adjusting Michael's blanket against the cold, all of us moving together like we've been a family forever, because that's what we are now. Forever family, chosen family, real family in every way that matters. Later that evening, after the girls are in bed and Elena is nursing the baby, and Marcus is in his office catching up on emails, I sit on the back porch, despite the December cold, looking out over the grounds of the place I now call home. My phone sits silent on the table beside me. There are no missed calls from Derek, no texts from Cheryl. That chapter of my life is closed, and I'm okay with that. I learned something important. You can't force people to love you, and you shouldn't waste your life trying to earn affection from those who've decided you're not worthy of it. But you can open your heart to the people who see your value, who choose you, who make space for you in their lives. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, those people become more than friends or benefactors or temporary shelter. They become family. The back door opens and Marcus appears with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. Thought you might be cold out here, he says, settling into the chair beside me. Just thinking, I say, accepting the mug gratefully. About what? I look across the yard toward the workshop we built together. The treehouse that bears both our craftsmanship, the garden that will bloom again come spring because Elena and I planned it that way. About how strange life is, I say finally. 2 years ago, if someone had told me I'd be sitting here as part of your family, planning to officially become your father and the girl's grandfather, I'd have thought they were crazy. Marcus sips his coffee and nods. I know what you mean. If someone had told me that helping a stranger on the highway would heal something in me I didn't even know was broken, I wouldn't have believed them either. We sit in comfortable silence, father and son in every way that matters, watching the stars appear in the clear winter sky. Marcus, I say eventually, thank you. For what? For seeing me, for choosing me, for giving me a second chance at being the man I was meant to be. Marcus reaches over and claps me on the shoulder. Thank you for stopping that night. Thank you for being the father I needed and the grandfather my children deserve. Inside the house, I can hear Elena humming a lullaby to Michael, the soft sound drifting through the windows. Tomorrow the girls will wake up and demand pancakes, and we'll plan our day around their activities and needs. Elena will have another doctor's appointment, and I'll drive her because Marcus has a conference call he can't miss. This weekend, we'll start planning Sophia's 10th birthday party and Isabella's science fair project. These are the small, ordinary moments that make up a life. They're not dramatic or earth-shaking, but they're precious beyond measure because they're shared with people who love you and whom you love in return. As we head inside, Marcus's phone buzzes with a text. He glances at it and shows me the screen. It's from the lawyer handling our adoption paperwork. Everything looks good. Court date set for January 15th. Congratulations to the Boyd family. The Boyd family. It has a beautiful sound to it. In 3 weeks, it will be official. But sitting here tonight, surrounded by the warmth and love of the people who chose me, I realize it's been true for a long time already. I'm home. Finally, completely, permanently home. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below, and meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.